Hey everybody, welcome back to Boxcar's Garage. Today's project is going to have to do with a little bit of shop cleanup, specifically tool cleanup, tools that have become rusted through the years and have been neglected. I've got a lot of that laying around, and you will see I've got quite a job ahead of me. So to help me with that job, I elected to use for the first time this product called Evapo-Rust. I had seen it on another fellow's YouTube channel. His channel name is Hand Tool Rescue, does awesome projects, and one of his sponsors is Evapo-Rust. And so I got the idea, hey, I need to incorporate that into my shop. Now, my first problem that I had with what I had available to me was the size of container. My local Harbor Freight sells a 1 gallon. That's the largest container that they sell. Why is that a problem? Well, the larger container, the 3.5 gallon, has a colander built into it to where you can basically throw your materials into the colander and put the lid on it, and then come back later. You pull up the colander. It's got a handle. You can pull out your items and go to rinse them off, and it's a really neat feature to have that integrated into the bucket. Well, that size of container was not available to me, so I had to make my own. And to do that, I went ahead and I went to Dollar Tree and I picked up an outer container and a cheap plastic colander. As you can see there, they were they were $1 a piece, so I had $2 in that round container and colander to get me started with my project. The small items that I had fit well within that particular arrangement, and will probably be the only type items that I use for that container. In order to save your solution, I'd really only cover the top of your parts that you're wanting to de-rust, because really putting a bunch on top of all the rusted material, it doesn't do you any good, and I think eventually just wastes more material. So just cover it up to the top and be done with it. I got a larger container and was also able to find a square basket colander type thing to put some of the larger tools in, and that was key to the majority of tools that I wanted to de-rust. I actually need another larger size, maybe a longer size, to do some even larger pieces of equipment, and I haven't found it yet. But I do have a larger square colander. I just haven't bought the outer bin yet. They didn't have the size that I needed to go to a larger arrangement at the Dollar Tree, so I'm going to have to find another source of supply. The only downside to the Dollar Tree stuff that I bought was it is a little bit lighter weight, and I was trying to force a metal file into my larger tray that you're seeing there. Luckily, I had bought two. I ripped a hole in that container, and my solution started pouring out of it. So my original concern about evaporation was really a moot point, because I had a hole ripped in the side, and I probably lost a fair amount of material. So anyway, if you buy the cheap stuff, be ginger with it, because you will rip a hole in it if you go gorilla on it. So I was able to cover the items in that tray. I ran a little short in solution and had to take some from the round container, but it all worked out in the end. So I got all the tools in the solution, and I let it set overnight, and got up early the next morning and made sure I had my camera on. I wanted to show you the results right out of the solution. The tools that I'm going through right now, those have been rinsed off after setting in the solution. I didn't do any detail work. I didn't do any hand scrubbing on them. I just rinsed them off to neutralize the solution that was on them and threw them in the bucket. And later on, I would let them dry out throughout the day before I did anything else on them. But some of the key points that I'd pass on that I noticed right out of the solution was that some tools came out with a black coating on them, or residue maybe from the chemical process that happened. The effect of that coating or the darkness of that coating really varied from piece to piece. The punches, they came out pretty clean. They didn't require a lot of extra handwork in brightening them up later on. The files, they did require a lot of extra work. They were, they had the film on them, and probably the teeth on the file itself, held that black residue a little bit more than some of the other pieces of equipment. And I noticed that tools with knurling or the crosshatch, that you may find along the body of a tool, like on punches and that sort of thing, those came out extremely black and needed some additional scrubbing. Now, I also threw some tools that had handles, rubber handles, and had lettering on those handles, and I was wondering what the chemical was going to do to those. I was pleased with the results. It played no effect on the handles or the plastic or the sheen of the plastic. It just focused on the metal, and that was a good thing. The tool that I got there, those O-ring pliers, it has got originally it had a black oxide or anodized finish. Yeah, let's call it anodized finish. And that chemical did strip that anodized finish away. So if I'm not happy with the fact that it's gone, I could always repaint it, I suppose, or I could just keep it metal finish and ensure that I keep it oiled up to where it doesn't rust. That's going to be a choice that I'll have to make later. The punches, they also had a black anodized finish originally on them, and it's gone now. So I've got to decide what I want to do with that. If I want to put some black paint back on those, I can. So after inspecting the solution results, I went ahead and laid down some paper towels across the table and allowed each individual item to dry while I was at work. And when I came home and inspected what I had, I noticed that there was a fair amount of flash rusting that had occurred. Now, I do keep the humidity level down as low as I possibly can in my shop, but even at 65%, let's say, humidity level in the shop, I still picked up a fair amount of flash rusting. So my only word of caution would be that if you do strip down some equipment in this solution, I wouldn't leave them completely bare for any extended amount of time, because it's just going to add into extra work when you go and clean them up with the wire wheel. So I would try to get some protectant on there as soon as you can, just in order to where you're not wasting any unnecessary time. But I was happy with the results up to this point. We were doing good. It did take a fair amount of time to get through all those pieces on the wire wheel. Primarily, I use the stationary grinder, the wire wheel attachment on it, for most of the cleanup. I did also use a attachment on my drill press, which was another wire wheel, but it was actually made out of nylon from a company called Nylox, and I believe I used the medium grade. I believe that's the blue. I could have used maybe the coarser grade. Now that I look back on it, the medium grade wasn't all that effective when it came to some of the troubled areas that I had to deal with. So I might have to upgrade and get the coarser grit if I'm going to use that drill press option in the future. As far as my top coat goes, I use a product called T9 BioShield. I started using this product with my woodworking equipment. The machine beds in my particular part of the country, it rusts up really quick, and it's a lot of work to get them cleaned up and looking nice and bright and slick. And T9 BioShield actually holds up better than anything I had used in the past. So I decided to use that as my top coat for the individual tools, and we'll see how that works through the next couple of months, or if I need to find another source of supply for that. The Never Dull, that's an oldie but a goodie. If you've never used it, it's basically some chemically impregnated wool of some type. It's a little bit abrasive. It works really well on chrome and brass and that sort of thing. It'll really shine it right up. Some of the light surface rusting that's on my chromed out tools, I'm going to be using that. And the larger can that I've got in my hand there, that's just kind of a show and tell piece. That's a 1950s Never Dull container. It's got some really awesome graphics. I'm a antique hound in addition to a shop junkie, and I like to keep some old things around me, kind of reminding me of the past. And you'll see it's still chock full of the product, which it's still got the chemical in it. I could use it, but I tend to just keep it up on the shelf and look at it, and I use the newer can typically for day to day. But yeah, it's a pretty neat little can, and I like it.